Good afternoon, and welcome to CBT's first podcast. I am Larry Hecker, one of the belting specialists here at CBT, and I'll be your host today. My other hat here at CBT beyond belting is our in-house hygienic design specialist. And you might be wondering, why would CBT have a in-house hygienic design specialist? And it kind of goes back 10 years to when FSMA, or the Food Modernization Safety Act, came into existence. And at that point, not to get into too deep of detail, but essentially the burden of proof for food manufacturers switched from the government to the food manufacturer themselves, where they had to document things and be much more on top of things on how things were produced in plants. And ultimately, out of that, food manufacturers realized they needed help from the outside to make their plants better. And our vendors, same thing, they saw new requirements that food manufacturers were needing and began to design products to fit and fill those needs. So as a company, CBT looked at this and said, boy, I think our customers need help in this area, and someone needs to learn about this hygienic design stuff. And I was chosen and did quite a bit of training, and here I am today talking about FoodSafe bearings. And my guest today from Dodge is David Konitz. And David, welcome.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate you having me.
Before we go on, can you give our listeners just a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm the global product manager for ball bearings with Dodge, and I've been with the company for about 20 years, and most recently in this role for about the last 5 years.
Well, thank you for spending some time with us this morning. I'm certainly going to learn some stuff, and hopefully our listeners do as well. We're going to talk about bearings today, and so my first question for you is, what kind of headaches do bearings cause in food applications or other washdown applications, and kind of what are some of the ways bearings fail?
Yeah, good question. A lot of folks, they view bearings as a commodity, and it really just couldn't be further from the truth. Every rotating shaft in a plant is supported by a bearing. And, it's a big deal. If you've got a failure, you can shut down a process. It can turn into something bigger. If you've got a corrosion that forms on a bearing, you can have an FDA inspection. That could be a failure and possibly a fine. And in the worst case, you could have a recall. Based on a failure, something getting into the process or the final product. So it's a really big deal, and it's a big challenge for our food processors today. The two biggest areas that we see are problems are really for bearing failures are grease washout and also corrosion.
Okay. So why did Dodge create the FoodSafe line of bearings?
Yeah, it really started by just listening to our customers. So we went out and we talked to a wide variety of people who use this product today. And, the feedback we got was, we want something that's got less maintenance and more life. So we challenged our engineering team to design a maintenance-free bearing that wouldn't corrode from the harsh environments and caustics and would withstand the high-pressure washdown, that is now in place today. So basically, they said if you design a bearing that'll last in these conditions for a year, we'll buy it.
Okay. Well, we're glad you did. Kind of something I want to ask you about. What is IP69, and how did Dodge test the bearings in order to get that kind of certification?
Great question. So IP69 is, like you just said, a certification, and it's a level of it's an indicator of ingress protection. So the first digit is solid particle protection, and the second digit is liquid ingress protection. And like I said, the number one failure for mounted bearings is grease washout. So if you keep liquid from getting in, you can't wash the grease out. And this is it's a standardized test. Basically, what you do is you take a bearing, you mount it on a table that rotates, and high pressure, high temperature, close proximity. You take essentially a pressure washer, and you subject this bearing to high pressure spray at every single angle, and it's a pass-fail test. So if a single drop of water gets past the seal, then you've failed the test. So you've got to endure that with no ingress from water in those conditions.
Right. How far away from the bearing is the nozzle located?
4 to 5 inches. So it's really close. I mean, we're talking high pressure, 1450 psi at 4 inches. I mean, it'll take the skin off your hand if you were foolish enough to put it there.
Wow. I know, talking to some of my customers in the food world, and they always talk about the sanitation crews, and some are harder than others on equipment, and they're using that wand, spraying everything down, and you know in their defense, they have a limited amount of time in order to clean a plant before the plant wants to get up and running. So I'm sure that's why sometimes the wand gets really close to those bearings, and I'm really glad that there's tests out there in order to prove that someone's product can handle that kind of abuse. Really, is what it is on the bearings. So, David, what separates Dodge's bearings from the other guys' bearings that are stainless steel house bearings, and they might have an offset on the backside, just like yours does? And I understand you've got a sample of that offset. Can you hold that up real quick?
I do, and here is our standoff bearing. You can see that they're integral standoffs right here. But basically, there's a few main differences. Number one, ours is a maintenance-free design. The insert itself is very unique. Our insert has got a base material of stainless steel, but it actually has a coating that outperforms stainless steel in a corrosive environment, which is really unique. We call it our clean tech coating. And then our lubrication protection system is really different. So, it starts out with our Hydro Armor seal and our patented Max Life cage, and that keeps the grease in the bearing better than anyone in the industry. But I would say that the number one thing, if you put everything together, is our performance warranty. So we've got a warranty that's unlike anyone else in the entire industry. Most people's products have a 1-year warranty that covers materials and workmanship. And our product's really different. It's the only one that actually covers you for performance in a high pressure washdown situation. So, it just kind of reinforces how much confidence we have in this product.
Yeah, that makes it almost a no-brainer. Is that 1-year warranty from installation or purchase?
It's actually the customer gets to start the clock, which is really different as well. So you register the product, and that's when the clock starts as far as your warranty goes. So if you had this on your shelf for 6 months, you're not eating into your warranty. You install it on your equipment, and then register the product, and you've got a year from that point in time.
Man, that is fantastic. Now, I'm going to assume that these bearings are grease for life. There's no place to install more grease, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good. And is the grease inside those bearings food grade?
Yep, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. Now, these bearings, they come in the same housing sizes as your traditional bearings do?
They do. They're interchangeable with our Easy Clean, our Ultra Clean bearings. Obviously, not the standoffs but the standard housing. So here's a standard pillow block that's interchangeable with Easy Clean and Ultra Clean, and the standoff with the integral spacers is different in that sense.
Right. So, but going like for like, the shaft height would be the same, and the hole spacing is going to be the same, correct?
All the critical dimensions. That's right.
Yeah, I know when we've done some retrofitting on new designs, we typically make sure we design in the bearing with the standoff to eliminate that sandwich area. Now, when we retrofit, a lot of times the shaft isn't long enough in order to use those standoff bearings because obviously the length through bore gets longer. So in those cases, we either don't use the standoff, or if they can change the shaft out and make it longer, then we'll use those offset bearings. But that's good to know, and it's good that the customers with no modifications to their machines otherwise can try these bearings out and really see how they perform, which I'm sure is great. Which gets me on my next question is what kind of stocking levels do you have on these bearings?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, there's local stock with channel partners like yourself, and then also we've got fulfillment centers across the country. So, in Tennessee and Texas and out in near California. Um, and in addition to that, these products are manufactured in Rogersville, Tennessee. So we're well equipped for quick turnarounds if there's a need for a product that for some reason isn't in stock.
Especially right now with the issues with importing stuff and boats stacked up on the coast, it's good to know that these bearings are being made right here, and we can get them quickly. If for some reason we're out of stock, knowing that you guys can make some pretty quick for us without having to worry about importing this or that is really a good thing, and I think it's another level for our customers to have just one less thing to worry about, that if they do convert bearings over this Dodge line, they're not going to have a problem getting bearings in the near future. So that's good to know. Okay, we've talked about this bearing. Can you give me some success stories on where you've used these out in the field and how they performed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people think that this product is really just for protein applications, but we've had a lot of success in different industries. So everything from protein bars, so kind of snack bars, snack foods, bottling applications. When we do get into some of the really harsh duty stuff in protein, which I'm talking about is poultry, beef, pork, those type of applications. We've seen a lot of success in bird washers, or bird bath, excuse me, paw washers, general conveyance. Probably one of my favorite success stories is a situation where we had a customer that was getting about 6 to 8 weeks worth of life with a competitive product on a conveyor, and it's just a tough environment. And they switched us out to FoodSafe bearings, and those bearings are still running. It's 2.5 years later. They've actually converted the whole plant, and they continue to get savings every day from those bearings. So we just let the performance of the bearings kind of speak for themselves.
That's pretty amazing. My high school math tells me that that's about a tenfold improvement on service life. And when you factor in the cost of the bearing, the labor to replace that bearing, that's quite a bit of savings beyond just simply the cost of the bearing. Your bearing could cost 4 times more, and it still would be a no-brainer. What kind of is a price premium of this bearing over your old stainless steel bearings? Is there kind of a price difference in that?
It's a really modest price difference. It's 7% higher than the Ultra Clean, and so you get all this extra value for really modest price premium.
Do you have some comparisons in life between the Ultra Clean and the new FoodSafe? Is there a pretty big bump in performance even between the Ultra Clean and that? Because the Ultra Clean is a really good bearing in its own right.
Yeah, it is a great bearing. It depends on the application, but the Ultra Clean also shares the same sealing system and max life cage. So a lot of life is attributed to how we protect that lubrication. What's different here is this product is maintenance free. It's sealed for life. So we do close up a couple of the areas where paths to get into the bearing because of that. But both perform very well. I would say the Ultra Clean, if you have a plant that wants to relubricate their bearing, that's the right choice for that plant and that environment. If you want something that's maintenance free, go with the FoodSafe.
Right. I would certainly tell my customers if that bearing's anywhere close to the food line, the flow of their product, I would get away from a regreasable bearing. I wrote a blog post one time, and I talked about in a food plant people going around and regreasing bearings. And my question is, where did the grease go? Why did they have to put more grease in it? And most people can't answer that question. And at that point they're hoping the grease went down the drain and not in the product. And so I would certainly recommend, if you have bearings on a piece of equipment that's handling your food products, but particularly non-packaged food product, to go with something non-greasable, again, so you don't have to worry about any type of grease getting out of there. And if you're pumping in new grease, old grease always comes out. And again, now you've got to deal with that in your food plant, which you really don't want to do. David, it's been wonderful taking this time with you today. Again, for our customers out there listening, Dodge has been a wonderful partner of ours for many, many, many years. They really do have a lot of factory support. At CBT, we have a lot of specialists like myself that are available to go out in the field, take a look at your applications, and really help your plant produce food more safely than they do right now, lower your overall cost of ownership of bearings, and hopefully provide just some recommendations that help people avoid costly shutdowns or recalls and things like that. But again, David, we appreciate your time today, and thank you for coming on. And I know I learned a lot today, and hopefully our listeners did too. So thank you very much, Dave.
Thanks, Larry.